Okay, guys, thank you so much for sending in your questions for this LinkedIn AMA. So normally these AMAs that I do are solely for the Pipeline Lab. I typically do about one a week. People submit their questions. I try to group them by category. We do all sorts of stuff. But I want to share this with everybody because everybody submitted some great questions to begin with. And look, normally I do this with like my mic and my lights, but it's been a busy week, also. This is what we're doing. So I am going to speed through this because who has time to watch a long video, especially about something like this? I will preface by saying I'm working on a LinkedIn intro course, a LinkedIn for Fractionals intro course that'll be inside Clubhouse that will eventually launch in the next few months. I know I said it was going to be like June, and here we are. So, but that is just because Pipeline Lab has been doing great, has been doing great, and has taken up a ton of my time. So, let's dig in, okay? You sent me some of your burning questions on LinkedIn, and I'm answering all of them today, but look, I'll tell you, I read through every single one, and here's what hit me about it. Almost none of them were actually like LinkedIn questions. There were maybe like one or two that were purely LinkedIn questions, but most of them were not. They were mostly questions about like myths that I think you've been sold because there's just so much bullshit out there. Like there really is just so much garbage advice. So, and with that garbage, I'm going to try not to go on a rant here. With that garbage advice, almost none of it was built for fractionals. People selling high trust, high ticket services to premium clients, right? It's built for core sellers and volume plays, and that's just not what we're doing here. Okay, so and look, I do this clearly for a living. I teach fractionals how to do this. I do it myself. I did it for my own fractional business. And I still get in my head sometimes about this because there is so much garbage out there. And I read one thing and I have literal proof that the opposite of it is true. And I still question myself for a second. So for those of you who are like, you just don't know what to believe, I get that. So, and I'm not saying you have to believe me, but I will at least be upfront with you and tell you what's up. Okay, so let's talk about it. First question: do I need a big following to get clients? No, you don't. I think growing your network is very important. So inside Pipeline Lab, we focus on growing our followings by about 1 to 2% every single 7 days. However, the reason for that is that we want to be filling our network with the right people. So I don't care if you have 10,000 followers. I don't care if you have 1,000. I would rather you have 500 of the right followers than 5,000 of the wrong followers, right? Like that's just common sense. So every connection you request, by the way, is sending a signal to the algorithm. It is deciding what room you're going to be put in. I like to call it stacking the deck. Okay, I want your network to be full of the right people, so your content is more likely to be is more likely to be delivered to the right people. Your messages go farther. Everything goes farther. Okay. Um, and this is why the line of like, niching down is for losers. I mean, they don't say it like that, but that's basically what people are saying, right? That advice is so backwards because you can't stack a deck that you haven't defined. And when we're selling premium high trust services, it is virtually impossible to do that when you're saying, oh, I have solved this problem for you, but I've also solved it for a million people and it's worked for every single one of them. The premium fractional client who is deep in their problem and in their feels and in the pain of the problem, they are like the angsty teenager who doesn't believe that anyone understands them. They run up to the room and they slam the door and they're like crying, like no one understands me. Your prospect is the same, basically. And so you have to fill your audience with the right people, but first you have to know who those right people are, right? That's the point I'm trying to get at. Okay, next question. Rapid fire, let's go. Does building connections and posting drive more leads than DMs? This is a question that came from Julianne. Thank you, Julianne. It is a great question. The answer is that you need both because they do different jobs. Your content and engagement, we think about that as inbound marketing, right? We want leads to come to us. They come inbound into our house and we sell them there. But that is your later engine. Inside the pipeline lab, we build two engines at once. We build your inbound engine, which is your later engine, and your outbound engine, that is your now engine. However, because we build them both at once, they do make each other more effective. So while we build both, because your later engine, your inbound, it takes time to build a brand and an audience that generates inbound leads. It takes time. There's no way around it. Unless you're like throwing ad money at it, and don't do that. Your now engine is your outbound engine. That is sending DMs, going to the people, going to their house and trying to sell them there. Your inbound engine, though, the things that feed it, like posting and sending connection requests and commenting on posts, it builds trust and warms. I've been talking since like 8 a.m., you guys. It builds trust and it warms people up. So then when you do reach out, they've already been exposed to you in some way, which means that they're way more likely to respond to your message. And so inside Pipeline Lab, we aim for a minimum 30% response rate to all of our DMs. That is pretty high, okay? But when you're doing it right, it should really be more like 40%, right? When you are also, remember, the niche is really like the layer underneath of this too, as well as making sure you're solving the right problem for the right niche. Because if you don't have those things figured out, your DMs aren't going to work either. So it really does all feed each other. Um, there are so many like LinkedIn influencers and coaches out there that say you only need one or the other. Can you generate business like that? Sure. It's going to take longer, it's going to be more work, and it's not going to be as sustainable. Okay, but you can do it. So if that's the route you want to take, by all means, this is more work in the beginning, but we're doing more work now, so it's less work later. But we don't take shortcuts here. We put in the work, we do it the right way because we're building something that lasts and not something that's going to just like fizzle out in a year. Okay. Next question. Okay. I heard saying DM me for the link. It gets you banned. Should I stop doing that? That's an interesting question. It does not get you banned. I actually haven't seen that or heard that. So if you know something I don't, like, please send it to me. But this myth needs to die, as well as the myth that you need to put the link that you want people to click on in the comments. LinkedIn patched that not too long ago, so it doesn't actually help you anymore to put it in the comments, okay? Um, LinkedIn does suppress reach on posts with external links in them. So if you drop your link right in the post, fewer people will likely see it. It's likely that fewer people will see it. The workaround that smart people use, or people who like know what's up, you post without the link, you tell people to comment or DM for the content that you're promoting. And then a few hours later, go back and edit the link into the post, but give it a few hours, right? You're not gaming anything, you're just not being punished by the algorithm, okay? So you won't get banned for it, as far as I know. But I want you to say comment or DM keyword. That also gets people to message you and engage with your stuff. And if someone's going to engage in that way, that is very high intent, and we love high intent engagement, okay? How do I sound like a premium fractional and not like everyone else? Heather here asked how to sound like herself and not blend in with every other fractional out there. This is one of my favorite questions I get often, actually. So here's the truth that I feel like this message is getting around on LinkedIn, but it's very underutilized in the fractional community. Your buttoned up, professionally filtered voice is not doing you any favors. That is why you sound like everyone else, or that you're using Claude or Chat GPT to write your content. I write all of my content, by the way. I will sometimes. plug an idea into Claude and have it write something for me, and then I rewrite it because seeing the wrong thing helps me write the right thing. Sometimes I will go into Claude and use the mic and just speak into it of what I want to write about and have it help me synthesize that. But I never post anything that is not 90% me in some way, right? So I want you to do that. I want you to write your own shit. It is worth the time. And I also want you to share your opinions and your thoughts and your experiences and your stories. Like vulnerability is what builds connection that eventually converts. Okay. So the best rule to follow with this is to share from the scar, not the wound. Okay. Not the open, bleeding, like gotta clean it out kind of wound. That is what makes people feel uncomfortable and can turn them off. Um, what you want to share is like the lesson that you learned on the other side once the wound was healed and closed. Okay. Um, and I want to make sure that all of your content sounds like the same person. And that is hard to do when you're using AI. So, look, if you don't feel like you're a natural writer, I'm not going to tell you you have to learn how to write. Like, I know you probably want to stop this video if that's what I'm telling you. We have plenty of people in the lab who are not writers, but they write great content because they're just saying what they think. So most of them will go onto Claude, use the mic feature, and just speak, like word vomit their opinion. And Claude will, we tell Claude not to write a post about it. We say just to give us the transcript and edit it and clean it up. And that makes a really big difference. But Heather, the full answer to your question, like the part about specific positioning and messaging, I can't do in a LinkedIn video. Um, as many of you know, right? Like your content is also not going to hit, and you're not going to sound like you're not going to sound like yourself or sound any different from anybody else if you are not if you don't have opinions, if you don't have a framework developed for how you do your work, if you don't have your niche nailed down, if you don't have the problem that you solve nailed down, all of that stuff feeds all of this, okay? All right, last two questions. I posted my offer and sent some DMs and I got nothing. Does LinkedIn even work? Uh, that's such a loaded question, truly. Like that could just mean so many different things. Um, I want to be super honest with you about this. Like if that is just all you've done, you shouldn't get anything from it. That's just not how it works, okay? I still do this too sometimes. I try really hard not to. I get a hunch an offer might land and I spend like a whole day on it and get totally sidetracked and push it out there and nothing happens, you know? But inbound is not like a faucet you can turn on. It does not work like that. It is a slow drip into a full stream. Or you can think of it like a garden, like the seeds you plant today are not going to bear fruit or flowers for the next like 60 to 90 days, right? I'm not a garden person, so I don't know. But the people who build like sustainable and very lucrative pipelines are the ones who keep going. There's also like the notorious 4 to 6 week slump. Like you put all this work into your LinkedIn and your content and all this stuff, and 4 to 6 weeks into it, you are getting nothing from it, and so you quit. Most people quit at that point. But you know how to not fail? You just don't quit. You just keep fucking going. That is a phrase we say all the time inside the lab. You just keep fucking going. Okay. So if you are there and it feels like nothing's happening, it is not a sign to quit. But if all you're doing is posting and expecting leads, that is not how it works. You have to send DMs. And if your DMs are not producing responses, go back to your foundation and then come work with me and learn how to send DMs that actually get responses. Last question, and I can't believe I'm keeping this under 30 minutes. I have followed all the good advice and it's still not working. Why? Um, I actually get this as a message probably like once a week of people who follow my content, my emails, my posts, and apply what they learn. And then they're like, why is it not working? I'm doing everything you tell me to do. And then I go look at their profile or I look at their website, look at their offer, their messaging, and it is completely trash, to say the least. I'm sorry to be like blunt about that. but it's usually that their niche is really vague or it's too specific, that they have like six offers when they really just need one really good one. Um, that their messaging is overly corporate or not specific enough, or it's jargony, or my least favorite is when it's clever. You don't need to be clever. You just need to say what is real and simple and straightforward, right? But just remember, like, watching me is not the same as doing it correctly on your own stuff. And that's not like a knock at all. I'm at a different phase than the people who are just starting with this, right? So some of the things that work for me will not work for you, and vice versa. But I would say 9 times out of 10, when you're doing all the stuff and nothing is working, it is almost always your foundation, your niche, your offer, your the business problem you solve within your offer, your pricing, your messaging, all of that kind of stuff. That is also what we solve inside of Pipeline Lab, by the way. Um, but here's what we're going to wrap up here. Here's what every single one of your questions had in common. You guys know a lot of this stuff already, so I don't think the gap is necessarily like the information. And that is why, like, you can take all this stuff from random people's posts and apply it, and nothing works like they say it will. It's really about having the right system and the right framework and everything that works together, right? The engines that work together. That is the difference between like tactics and strategies, too. You need a strategy, and then the tactics support your strategy. But if you're just posting on LinkedIn and wondering why shit's not working, it's because it's a tactic, it's not a strategy, okay? Um, but truly, take everything in this video and go run with it. You can do this. It is absolutely learnable and absolutely doable. And this is also what we do inside the Fractional Pipeline Lab. We tackle your foundation, we build your offer, we build your pipeline, we learn how to sell together, we do everything together. So, and you do it with a community of fractionals who are on the same journey as you. So it feels less alone, which is one of the worst parts about it, right? So, I hope this was helpful. If you have other questions, you know where to find me, and hopefully, I'll see some of you in the lab soon.